Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 27, VAAS Live. I'm Seth Jones, co-founder, and with me is Chad Nuss, master draftsman and humble wizard. Chad, how you doing this evening, bud?
I'm doing great. Just working on this page here. It looks like, unfortunately, you're frozen. Oh, there you are. Now you're
And
back.
now I'm back.
Yeah. No, I'm
Technology is an
good.
amazing thing.
Yeah. It can be sometimes a great blessing, sometimes super frustrating. But it worked out great. So
Absolutely. We're so grateful that you guys are joining us this evening. Episode 27. I can't believe it. We just had a milestone a couple episodes back with number 25, but 27 each week, week in and week out. This is VAAS Live. We're the Visual Arts Academy and Studio out of Louisville, Kentucky. And what we like to do is we like to paint, draw, and create with you and put the conversation and creativity. And so the goal is that you come and join us. We talk everything from Chad, art history, techniques, challenges, struggles, critiquing. We bring on guest artists. We have a whole lot of fun with all of you guys. And the hope is that you're creating along with us. So let us know that you're here. Let us know that what you're working on. Let us know if you have any questions or anything like that. And Chad and I, this is a great opportunity because we get to teach a lot throughout the week. But you and I, this is 2 hours where we get to just have great conversation and works on some of our own personal projects. And I'm working on a portrait of my daughter in oil, but you're doing something really special. I think this is week 2 or 3 of this for you. What are you working on, buddy?
yeah, so this is a page from my third graphic novel, the title called The Silence. And this is page 5, I think. So we're early on in the book. And in the previous times that we've been doing these lives, I've worked on different projects, whether it's large pencil drawings, charcoal drawings, cast drawings, those kind of things. But I think what I'm going to do over the next forever, how long, I will see how long this lasts, is work on my comic book pages from this book. So you can see the process that goes into making a book. What does that look like to make a comic book? And so what you see here is the first, well, it's not really the initial stage. It's one of the early stages where I'm penciling the layout, the large layout on the comic book paper. So usually my process, how it starts, I'll do thumbnails, which are the tiny drawings that just lay out the whole book and kind of help me with the flow and the narrative and the storytelling. And then each page, I'll just kind of rework a little bit until I'm happy with the composition. And then I'll go in with the large layout and start with the pencils. Once I'm happy with the pencils, then I'll ink them, then I'll scan them in, and then put in all the words and any other graphic things that I need to fix on the computer. And then at that point, it'll be ready for print. So this is still pretty early in the game. This book, I think I have at around 40 pages, so I'll be doing this for a while. But I think it'll be super interesting for you guys to kind of follow along and watch the process of what it's like alongside what you're doing, which is these large oil paintings, which I'm very fascinated with because I don't do a whole lot of painting. So I love watching your process as well. So tell us about where you're at.
Yeah, so I'm currently in the still early stages of the grisaille process, laying down my grayscale values. I'm really staying pretty loose here, Chad, at the moment. I'm just dropping in my values, really toning it out, tints and shades. Really excited where this is going. Really going to start working on her hair here in a little bit, as well as the top of her arm, and finish this up. But I want to give a quick shout out to Tony out there. Tony, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. We're so glad you're with us. Everybody over on Instagram that just jumped on as well. We're so grateful that you guys are joining us. Let us know you're here. Give us a like, comment, a share, ask questions. We're really excited to be able to dive into what you guys have going on. And Chad, it's funny how this always works because you and I do not discuss this beforehand. You and I don't really talk about topics. We kind of like to let it be spur of the moment, but you literally hinted at something that I've kind of been on a soapbox about this week, which are thumbnails. I was doing some sequential art lessons and some exploration sessions, and I talked about the value of thumbnails, right? The fact that you can figure out so much for such an inexpensive, mentally inexpensive and material inexpensive. But your thumbnails are pretty tight. Your thumbnails are really to tell out the story, flesh it out. But you do these beautiful thumbnails. How valuable are they to your process in creating this book?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of a thumbnail is you're not married to it. Like it's not a final drawing. It's not a masterpiece or anything like that. It's just a way to get your ideas down. and to really work out some, like I said before, the flow of the story, the composition of each page, make sure each page has the right variety, the right camera angles, those kind of things. And yeah, for me, it just helps me kind of work out the storyline. So like in my head, I'll have a basic idea where the beginning and the end of the book of that particular book is. And then what the thumbnails help you do is kind of work out each part of the story. And like you said, it's it's free. I mean, it's on a piece of paper. You can get like 15, 20 pages of thumbnails done on a single sheet of paper. So it's really economical, I guess is the word I'm trying to say. But yeah, it's fast. It lets you work fast, lets you experiment. So just because you have a thumbnail that you're happy with doesn't mean that you have to go with that. You can try some different thumbnails, try some different ideas. That way you're not, you don't get into a page and spend hours and hours and hours and then have to change it. You can work all that out beforehand.
Absolutely. Good to see Matt as well. Great to be back. It's always nice when I get to jump back in. Great to see you join us, Matt. Thanks for giving us a shout out. Let us know you guys are here. Ask us any questions. But I'm going to go back to what we were talking about just now, which are thumbnails. And Chad, I think I may have mentioned this on a previous episode. One of the greatest things I saw as a young artist was actually on the appendices of the Lord of the Rings Extended Edition. I don't know if I've talked about this or not, but a lot of you guys might be new. There's a whole segment on the storyboard section that Peter Jackson talks about how beneficial it was to plan out his story just with pencils and paper. And you and I talked a lot about the benefits of being able to draw, right? Like being able to be a draftsman or a draftsperson, and how it helps not only with your layouts and your composition, but your rendering, but also that ability to grab things from your mind and produce them. Because you've mentioned on multiple episodes here that a lot of times you're not using a reference when you draw. Do you find that, cataloging those different things, right? Metals, textures, shapes, objects, does that help when you're here? Or is it one of those things where you're like, no, I'm just kind of going to go with the flow?
Yeah, I typically just kind of go with the flow. I mean, I think there's probably pros and cons to both, like to have everything planned out before, sketch everything out, that kind of thing. But what I've found is like, it honestly, at the end of the day, like the individual idea or designs and details and things like that, they can change within reason, so like you don't have to have everything all the way planned out 100%. And the downside of that is you might work on a thing like, for example, the robot face that I'm working on in this page. I've changed it several times, and I thought to myself, well, I could have done like 10 different sketches of robot faces in my sketchbook, and I would have figured out which one and then put that down. It would have been a lot faster. So maybe that's my weakness. There's other artists that would do it differently than me. So there's not one particular way. It's just the way that I tend to do it. And maybe that's just for me. Like I don't have a lot of extra time to spend on this. So like if I'm doing like 10 different designs or whatever, I'm thinking, well, I could be using that time to actually draw the page. So it's just it's just a personal preference, I think. So
Absolutely. Patricia, great to see you on here as well. Thanks for jumping in. I tell you what, guys, it is so nice when you let us know that you're here. So if you're watching us live, let us know, or even later on if you're watching this afterwards when it's recorded or you're restreaming it. We're so grateful that you guys jump on. Again, I'm Seth Jones. We've got Chad Nuss, and we're just going to be creating. Chad's working on this beautiful book number 3 of his epic space opera. Well, I don't want to call it necessarily a space opera, but it's beautiful. It's an epic story. It's brilliant. The Silence, book number 3. And I'm working on something else that is beautiful, Chad, one of my daughters. And so we're so excited that you guys have joined us. Let us know you're here. Ask questions. And Chad, as I'm working on this, I'm going to mention something. I teach a lot of my students to block in values, right? To really block in those values and to start mixing your pigments really, really well. And so I kind of wanted to show something to everybody. This is one of my palettes. So I have 2 separate palettes. I don't know if you guys can see that. It gets a little shiny there. But this is one palette where I will organically mix all of my values on the fly. But then I have a second palette here, Chad, that I've pre-mixed some of my values. So I've got about 9 or 10 different values here in a value scale stuff. And those 2 palettes allow me to really get almost the full variation, full value range, right? Really strong values in this grisaille process. So if you're one of my students, you've been watching and watching now, know that I'm practicing what I preach here, guys. I'm not just making you do things that I don't do myself. Because sometimes I feel like students feel that way, right, Chad? Like, oh, there's no way Mr. Seth actually does this. I do, I promise you. And it's really a great tool. So as I keep working on this, know that I'm doing a lot of those things that we teach you here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. And Chad, we've got a great comment here from Matt. If you want to take this one, I agree with him. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, he says thumbnails are fantastic, not just for planning preparation, but to learn new things. For example, textures. Yes, exactly. I mean, that's a discussion we often have in my classes about even just keeping a sketchbook, let alone thumbnails, is that a lot of times people think with a sketchbook that you have to have these beautiful drawings, these amazing rendered, finished works that people are just going to be blown away as they're flipping through their sketchbook, or they use their sketchbook in a way in which they'll just draw all the things that they're strong at or that they like to draw, and it's usually because they're good at those things. But really the point of a sketchbook and the point of thumbnails is to work on new things that you don't normally do, things that are challenging, things that you're really having a struggle with. If you don't do that, then you run into the problem that I'm running into right now, which is I'm trying to draw this hand that I can't get right, and so I've got to draw over and over and over until I finally get it. But if you work that out in your sketchbook beforehand, then you don't have to go through all that. You've already practiced up front. So yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just going to say, which is really interesting because in July, you're teaching a sketchbook class, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I'm teaching on how to keep one, and I struggle to keep one because I typically just go right into my drawings. But I do use thumbnail sketches a lot, and usually I think for me the reason why I don't do sketchbook as much is because I typically try to, whatever the next drawing I'm working on, it's usually something I've never done before. So it's something I've already challenged myself to think, okay, this is something I like. For example, I did the portrait of my wife. Up to that point I hadn't done a lot of portraits, so the portrait was a challenge, and then the size was a challenge, so I did that. And then after that, the next one I did was a landscape. That's the one I was working on a couple months ago, and I hadn't done a whole lot of landscapes, so I thought, well, this would be a good time to really work on it. The downside of that is that's kind of terrifying because you've got this huge drawing that you're working on that you don't have a lot of sketches to go with. But I think that's why I do it, is to put myself in that position of panic and try to get myself out of it. So so on the other side, you would do all of that work in a sketchbook up front. I mean, you look at the masters and some of their sketchbooks are just filled with pages and pages of textures and landscape and figures and anatomy and all this stuff, so in teaching this upcoming class, I'm definitely going to highlight and stress the value of having a sketchbook and what its real purpose is and how it helps you to grow as an artist, for sure. One thing I want to say real quick. Yeah, one thing I was going to say was hello to Brandon. We love you and love hanging out with you, and are so excited to see you at the studio. And yes, I agree. More and more and more layers. Brendan says that because every time I see him and I walk by and he's painting something, I always stop and I'll say real quietly, especially if Seth is teaching, I'll say, "Hey, Brendan, you need more layers." just a fun little thing that we have. So yeah.
I love that he's giving it back to you, Brendan. It's great to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining us live. Caitlin over there, thanks for joining us in. Namir, Mrs. Fashions, it's Chris, all of you guys, everybody that's over on Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're so grateful that you guys are creating with us. If you didn't get that, we just had a little bit of an inside joke there with a couple of our students. But we've been talking about thumbnails very early on here, the planning process. I will tell you a little story about thumbnails that really worked for me. Was the very first poster competition that I won, Chad. I did about 3 or 4 thumbnails, right? And I thought I had this great composition, really had it planned out. But then I was pushed by a mentor to do about 4 or 5 more thumbnails, right? Like I had to, and I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, I've come up with every composition. Here's the really good one. Here's the one I really want to do. And here's 3 more. And I'm like, okay, these 3 are going to be good. It is what it is. But then I was pushed to do about 3 or 4 more thumbnails, and they didn't take long. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like these beautiful renderings or anything. But about the 7th or 8th one, I can't remember exactly, it was even better than that initial one I came up with, right? Like it was like, oh man, now that's really unique. That's telling a story visually that I hadn't thought of before. And so I think, to your point, like you mentioned, like, it's a low investment, right? It became something that I became very passionate about, because a lot of times pushing yourself beyond what you initially think can come up with great ideas. That doesn't mean that if you do 10 thumbnails, the 10th one's going to be the best. Sometimes your first instincts are spot on, right, bud? I mean, it just kind of gives or take. But I think pushing yourself sometimes is a good way to find new things that you didn't necessarily think of. And not only that, as you mentioned, the sketchbook is a great location to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, usually my first idea is the best idea, so that's why I don't have a sketchbook. So.
And here comes the Hubble wizard. He strikes again.
No, I'm just kidding. I feel the same way. I mean, there have been, I know I kind of joke about it, but it is kind of funny because I will, I'll do a sketch and I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that one. And then I will try to do several more. And then a lot of times I end up doing the first or second idea. But to your point, there have been those times where you will find an idea that you hadn't considered before because you tried a different angle, or you tried different lighting or whatever it is. And you miss out on a lot of opportunities if you don't put the time in doing extra thumbnails.
Well, and sometimes I'll be working on a certain project and I'll do a thumbnail and it doesn't work for that specific project. But next thing you know, that idea comes back again on a different project or a different layout or a different story component. I go, oh man, I remember I created something like this previously that would work here. And so it's all about getting things out of the visual, getting it out of your mind and onto paper so that you can visually see and test it. We've got another great comment here from Matt. Man, Matt is on fire today. And I love that. He goes, yes, jump in and test the waters. I do that a lot, but I completely agree that sketchbooks are super important. Not polished pieces, but practice and learning. That's where growth really happens. Not that it can't when you jump in, but there's value to both. And I think Matt's hit the nail on the head here. And even our co-founder, Thomas, he had to remind me for years and years and years, because I would always want to go in and try to do a finished piece right away. Right, Matt? Like I'd want to sit down, here's my piece of paper, and I'm just going to finish it. Or here's a canvas, and it has to be a completed work of art, right? Or it wasn't successful. But that's not always true. Sometimes it's good to sit down and do those practices, and be okay with not having a finished work. And a lot of times there's energy and movement, and you discover techniques or skills that maybe you wouldn't have if you were being a little bit more refined and not quite as open, I think. But that's just one of my takes on it. And I'm going to try. I really would like to try to get this hand done. And honestly, I'm a little nervous about it, Chad, because this hand, it's very subtle on the knuckles, right? Like to get these forms and these shapes on these knuckles, because our hand is kind of kept close to her chest and kind of congested. It's tight. So you don't really see a lot of the phalanges. You don't really see a lot of those metacarpals. And so I have to really figure out a way to convey that this hand is, clenched and knuckled up with not a whole lot of detail, right? Normally when you do hands, you get those beautiful gestural fingers to express a lot of things. But I want to make sure I get the planes right on this, or else I think it's going to flatten out a whole lot.
Hey, talking about that, what's your goal for our 2 hours together?
So tonight, and it's funny because a lot of times I really get invigorated when we're painting live, and I tend to get a lot more work done than I expected. I'd really like to get the back of our hand here done, really get that wrapped up, start working down into the forearm, but then I'd like to try to tackle a little bit of her ear. So if you guys see up here, I'd really like to try to get into some of that ear, because the ear has some nice depth to it. And I think if you can paint a beautiful ear, ears are gorgeous in paintings. You know what I mean? Like they're just really fun to look at. So I'm going to try to get the back of her hand here done, get these knuckles kind of separated, because right now you can see they're blending into the neck there, and then really kind of come up here and start working on that ear and maybe get some of that hair. And so that's kind of the goal for the 2 hours. If I can get there, I'll walk away going, man, we really accomplished a lot. And of course, my other goal, Chad, is to entertain our viewers. Hopefully they learn something about art, have a little fun. Let us know what you're drawing. Let us know what you're painting. Let us know what you're creating. Matt, Man, you've been giving us some gold on your comments here. What are you working on, bud? Patricia, what are you working on? Brendan, what are you working on? Brendan, I know you got about 10 different projects going, buddy. What are you working on? And even if you're not one of our students, or if you haven't commented before, tonight's your chance. Let us know you're here. Let us know what you're working on. Let us know if you like what we're creating. And so, Chad, I'm going to achieve that tonight, whether I like it or not. And I may not even leave the studio until I get that done. What about you? What's your goal for the 2 hours?
Well, the first thing I want to say, you mentioned about Matt and asking what he's working on. He sent me a couple texts today about he's really focusing on hyperrealism and using graphite and charcoal to get that. And he showed me the sketch of an eye, and I've seen different phases of the process. And the last one he showed me, it was pretty incredible. I mean, it looked like a photograph. And so, what's that? I'm sorry?
I said, that's fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was really impressed with that. So I just want to give him a little shout out because he's putting in a lot of work. So he's doing a great job. For me, my goal today, I think, is to really clean up these faces here in the background. I'll give you a little overview of the page.
Yeah, let me take that full screen there, bud.
Here you can see there's the whole page there. And so in the foreground is this kind of like robot guard. And then behind, you can't quite see it yet, but there's a door that's closing and all these people behind the door. There's a window in the door so you can see through the door to the people behind. And they're trying to keep the door from closing because they know once that door closes, they're done for. So yeah, so I just want to clean up their faces, fix some of these hands, some of those details. If I can get those faces where I really want them, clean them up, put some extra, just some shading and value and tone in there and get them ready to be inked, I'll be happy with that. And then beyond that, really kind of nail down this robot face. I like the design overall, but it's kind of one of those designs where it kind of looks like a copy, even though it's not. Like I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's like from Halo or something like that. So I want it to be a little bit more unique than where it's at right now. So I might play around with that design a little bit more. But yeah, so I think that's it. So I'm working on that girl's face and her hair and the texture there. I'm working on this hand right here, which is driving me crazy up front here. It's supposed to be him like pressing his hand against the glass, but it doesn't look like that right now. So here you can see, even I struggle with things like hands and faces and things like that because they're very hard, especially if you're not using a reference.
Yep.
So yeah, I've redrawn that hand several times and I'll probably redraw it a couple more times. But yeah, I'm going to work on that hand. And then I've got a face here in the back that I've just gently sketched in. I'll probably start putting some details on that and then clean up these other guys there in the background. So that's kind of my goal. I don't have any lofty aspirations to get this done tonight. This still has a lot of work to do, but hopefully this week after this, I'll work on it a little bit here and there through the week, and hopefully by next Saturday I'll have it done. So yeah,
I will tell you, Chad, if you're a fan of comics out there and you're watching this, what a treat, right? What a treat to get to watch these pages come to life and then come in and pick up an actual copy of the Silence book number 3 and be like, I watched this story come into existence. I'm so grateful that you're sharing this with us and sharing your process and sharing all that you go through, because I think it's absolutely exhilarating and fun to get to see it kind of come to life. And if you're a fan of comics or storytelling or just drawing or sketching, it's absolutely wonderful to get to see Chad work on his story and his pages. And I think it's going to be an incredible journey to see these kind of come to life throughout the time that we spend together. Thank you for sharing that, Chad. I think it's awesome, man. Thank you.
Well, hey, you're welcome. And I especially, I'm especially excited for Patricia to listen to myself critique my own work. And so I think you could just saw right there, I'm not happy with that hand, and it's okay because I'm going to work at it. I'm going to practice. I'm going to change it, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be amazing right now because it's just in the beginning stages. And I think, we all have that fear of like drawing in front of other people and they see us mess up. But I've come to the realization that it's actually really good for people to see people like you and me mess up, because we've been doing this for a very long time, and people look at our stuff and are like, oh, like they're very complimentary and they're always like, man, I want to draw like that or whatever, and they don't see all of the bad drawing behind it. And I do a plenty of bad drawing, that is for sure. You often will not see that because I'm like most people. I'm kind of proud in that way. I don't like people to see drawings that I didn't do very well. And so this forces me to get out of my comfort zone so you can see all my mistakes. It's like last week I started this page, and that's terrifying for me. I've never shown anyone the very beginning stages of a page. You usually won't see my pages until I'm happy with the composition, the anatomy, and those kind of things. You'll see me like cleaning it up. And I did that a little bit even with this because I worked on it this week because I wanted to get these faces to look better than they were. So I did some of that. But at the same time, you see this hand is driving me crazy, and so you'll get to see me mess up plenty of times. So
Well, and I think it was like episode, I want to say like 8 or 9, where I like almost really damaged the painting I was working on. You remember? I mean, and it was like, it completely threw me off. I was embarrassed. Well, I mean, I don't want to say embarrassed, but you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that on our live stream. Like, look at that. I just pulled all those layers up, but then you recover, and I think it's healthy. I think it is good, and it does keep the ego in check. And, I think it's good for students to see that, sometimes our demos don't go well, right? I mean, that's really terrifying, is when a demo doesn't go well. You're like, I'm supposed to be able to do this perfect every time. And that gets really stressful. But I agree with you. I think there's success that comes from opening up and being honest about the process and the mess ups and the challenges that come with it. And, I think it is good for our students to get to see it, but it's also healthy for other artists, right? To share in that. And I'm grateful that we get to share this with you guys, and hopefully you share some of that with us. I will give a shout out. Patricia says that she's working on 2 more Beatrix Potter watercolors to give her expectant niece for her nursery. How wonderful. It is so great when we get to share our creativity and our artwork with others. It is a wonderful gift that you can give. It's something that means a whole lot. I personally love it. I think it's absolutely spectacular, Patricia, that you're doing. And Chad, Matt wants you to tell everybody, where can you pick up Volume 1 and Volume 2 of The Silence? Where can they pick up copies of these novels that we've been talking about now for 27 episodes and even longer?
yeah, so one thing I started telling people in last week, a couple of people asked me as well, and I think the best way to get a hold of these is if you live in the Louisville area, to come to the Visual Arts Academy and Studio, because we have them in studio for sale there. And then if you live outside of Louisville, I've suggested, and I didn't talk to Seth about this, so I could be wrong. So I apologize up front. But I told them to check out the website and the email, and to email us or contact us through the phone, and we'll figure out a way to get the books to you or sell them, or whatever we need to do to get you the books.
Absolutely. And then you also get a chance that, Chad, I would think, if they take that time and do that process, will you sign them for them?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I would love to sign them. Yeah, I have no problem with that. But yeah, that right now they're exclusively being sold through the Visual Arts Academy. So that's where you'd pick them up. So
that is awesome. And I would encourage you guys to do so. Pretty much everybody that comes in and gets a copy is blown away. So then what's really cool, if you do that, if you read book 1 and book 2, you will then see where the story's progressing way in advance. You're getting like behind the scenes, all kinds of details way before it ever comes to life. And I think that's just absolutely exhilarating. I've been collecting comic books ever since I can remember. Thank you, Uncle James, for getting me into comic books and taking me to my first convention. I absolutely love them. And I think that The Silence is just a phenomenal story. It's a great concept. It's beautifully drawn, not just because this is our humble wizard's work, but because I'm a lover of the craft. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. Patricia does say, don't pick up that stump too soon, Chad. Don't pick up the stump too soon.
So that's an inside comment because from our drawing class. So Patricia is one of my drawing students right now. She's also one of your painting students, right? She's
right.
done some painting with you, and so she's in my drawing 101 class. And I gave her a hard time last Monday because we were doing contour drawings, and I was telling the students not to do any shading quite yet, just the outline. And she picked up her stump and started doing some shading. So I was like, don't pick that up too soon. We're just doing contour drawings for right now. So yeah.
And then, of course, I would love to give a quick shout out to Caitlin, my beautiful wife, my beautiful bride. She says, love watching you work. it makes me incredibly excited because we've been married for quite some time now. And I know that she still enjoys seeing the process of creation. She gets to see a lot of artwork get created, Chad, but I really do think, and I wish Thomas were on with us, our co-founder Thomas, there's something really, really special when you get to see the artist process. Don't you think? Like there's an energy, I don't know how to describe it. What is the French saying? You know, a je ne sais pas, or I don't know what it is. I butcher language. Don't make fun of me. But don't you, I mean, don't you love seeing the process come to life? Isn't it exhilarating?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be incredibly frustrating because you see these amazing artists and you see their process and they just like even in their initial sketches you're like, oh my gosh, even my like finished stuff doesn't even match that. But to your point, I mean, I love seeing, original very early sketches of masterworks. I love seeing sketchbook sketches, just seeing the process that artist goes through. I once found a Leonardo da Vinci drawing that I was like, if you saw this and you didn't know it was his, there's no way you would say this is Leonardo da
Oh.
Vinci because it wasn't really that great. I that sounds very arrogant for me to say, but just compared to his other work, I was like, oh wow, this isn't really that great of a sketch, but it just goes to show you no matter what level you're at, like we all have those sketches. So, but I do love seeing artists process and how they go, what they go through and how they work and you learn from it too. Like I said before, where I struggle to maybe do a lot of preliminary work when I see someone else doing a lot of it and I see how it pays off, it pushes me to do a lot more or to get better as an artist. So yeah, I love to see the process of other artists for sure.
And I think to your point, like even some of the great like contemporary comic artists, watching them just pull out a pen or a pencil and then just see them throw it down so fast and so accurately, right? It's like, oh my word, oh gosh, And but at the same time, it's the same thing I tell a lot of our students. They practice that a lot, a tremendous amount. Like they draw
Yeah.
so much. You know what I mean? It's amazing to me how much comes from practice. And it's like the Allen Iverson joke, right? We're talking about practice. We're talking about practice, man. Practice. It is true though. The practice does make perfect, and practice brings it to life. And so I think it's absolutely exhilarating to see those artists, what we would call those practices, right? Like even Da Vinci in his practice didn't do perfection. And so I think there's something to be said there. We've got a really great, I think this is a first time comment. I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but Deep Pixel AI Art 20. Hey, I've been genuinely curious. Do you think AI generated images can truly be considered art? I'd really appreciate you hearing your honest perspective. Chad, I don't know if you want to take this one. I can dive into this one first. Really appreciate the comment. Thanks for jumping on and watching. Hey, I've been genuinely curious. Do you think AI generated images can truly be considered art? I'll give you my personal take on this. And then Chad, if you want to dive in,
Yep.
I think AI is a phenomenal tool. I think it's a phenomenal piece of technology that can be utilized to assist in the creation of art. It makes beautiful images. It can render things out. It can create a lot of different content, and content creation is different. And I think it really comes down to what do you define as art? And I think that's been, Chad, you talk about art history. You're an art history nerd and a buff. That's been a discussion over the last, hundreds of years, right? What is art? Is contemporary art, the modern movement is, some of the, performance pieces. What is it that's happening? It's the same conversation that's been taking place for, in my opinion, a couple hundred years. It's just a different tool and a different topic. So Deep Pixel Art 20, I appreciate the comment. My thing is, I don't necessarily know if what I would define art as being art, if AI is creating art. It's creating images and content, and it's creating beautiful pieces. But to me, art has a little bit more oomph to it, a little bit more meaning, a little bit more content. And that's what I would define that as. Other people may have a difference of opinion. Chad, what do you think?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about AI. I think on the positive side, like you said, it can inspire new ideas. It can do things and make combinations, combine ideas that you never considered before. I've seen some like reels and shorts and videos that are just astounding. There's some of them are like really weird in ways that we never seen before. I've seen some where, they'll take an old Mario video game and turn it into like a 50s style film that it just is really bizarre, but very like intriguing to look at. Some artwork and stills that I've seen where it's really incredible and can inspire you to new ideas. However, on the other side of it, you always have to remember AI is reliant upon human creativity. So it is essentially stealing artwork from artists and using those ideas in new ways. Now, the counter to that is you could say, well, every great artist steals ideas and uses them for their own, or combines them with other ideas and uses it for their own. But in reality, an AI computer cannot create its own ideas. It can only use ideas that you put into it. So that way, it's very limited in that sense. And this is my personal philosophical point of view, that the one thing that makes us different than animals and inanimate objects is the fact that we can create. So the idea of a computer doing that, I think is fine. I don't think it'll be able to ever do what we can do as humans. Now, of course, they've said that about technology before and have been proven wrong. So I could be proved wrong eventually. But I think for me, my biggest hesitation is the fact that it can only create with existing material, which unfortunately happens to be other artists' work. And so I just want to protect the integrity of what artists have already created. However, it does have the potential to really push us to new ideas and new areas. And if you use it as a tool in that sense, then I think, yeah, it has great potential. But to just simply like type in like, hey, create this picture or whatever, and I know that's a very superficial understanding of AI, but for you to just type in words and then out pops, an image, and then for you to turn around and say, "Hey, this is my original artwork." For the people like us that have spent decades and decades learning how to draw, and then for someone to turn around and just say, "Well, I just told this computer what to do. It created the art. Now look how this amazing artwork." It kind of cheapens that, and like, it's honestly a little bit offensive, but um, because I've seen artists do that where
Yeah.
they will talk about, hey, this is my original artwork, and I'm like, you have not put in the time to learn the craft. What you've done is you've told a machine to do it for you, and you're now taking credit for what other people it took them 30 years to do. And it's a bit offensive, but at the same time, like I said before, there is an aspect in which AI can help you come
I
up
agree.
with new ideas and new processes. So it's kind of a both and, I think, yeah.
Well, and I think, hopefully you're on their Deep Pixel AI Art 20. We really appreciate it. I don't think this is going to go away for some time. It's the same conversation. Chad, you and I are old enough to remember when, oh, absolutely. Deep Pixel Art 20 says, thanks a ton. I genuinely appreciate the detailed explanation. It really means a lot to me. I'm super grateful. Oh, pleasure. That's what we're here for. We're here to have these kind of conversations with you guys. And I don't know, at what age you are, Deep Pixel Art 20, but Chad, we're getting a little bit older, buddy. I remember when Photoshop first came out. This was a similar kind of conversation. When Photoshop first came out, it was photography is dead. Nobody's going to take pictures anymore. Everybody's just going to, do this and do that and do this and create this. And you know what? My daughter, who's younger, has a Polaroid camera, right? I mean, film is still there. Film is actually making a comeback. And honestly, it didn't change photography, but it did change the way that we kind of look at some photography. For instance, you may have somebody in Chad, you remember this as well. I remember the first time that a snow leopard was filmed in the wild. It took them like 19 months or something like that, like 20 different expeditions to film a snow leopard in the wild for the first time ever, right? And now you have AI art that will just be like, show me snow leopard in the wild. It's not the same, right? There just isn't the same, to that. But these conversations are going to continue to happen. It's just like the virtual reality, the virtual worlds. That's going to be a similar kind of conversation. The tech is going to change. The tools are going to change. I guarantee you that there were people who were purists about, real oil paints versus synthetics, right? Like, you cannot use, you can't use this pigment. It's not a real pigment. It's fake, I don't know, whatever that may have been back in the day. That was my best attempt at like the 1700s or whatever. But you guys get where I'm going with it. And Matt, you've actually chimed in here. Chad, do you want to take Matt's comment on this one, buddy?
Yeah, he says, I agree with you both. What are your opinions of digital art? You don't need to learn to airbrush, paint, use other tools to create, yet it's an amazing tool and original art has and does get creative thoughts. Yes. So this is the exact same thing. So like that okay, so let's say you're learning how to draw on a on an iPad and you're using Procreate or whatever tool you're using. You have to remember it's still a tool, right? So even though it can do amazing things, if you don't understand the principles of composition or perspective or proportion or anatomy or any of the lighting, any of those things, it doesn't matter what tool you have. Your artwork is still not going to be that great. And so you have to remind yourself it's just a tool. So yes, you are right in the sense that you can use a digital tool to paint even though you're not using physical paint, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, whether you draw, whether you use acrylic, whether you use oil, whether you use digital, whether you use watercolor, whether you're using pieces of wood taped to a piece of styrofoam, it doesn't
Yep.
matter. The principles are still of being an artist are still the same. The ability to know how to compose, understand color, understand lighting, and as an artist to be able to express an idea through that. So the tool is not going to be able to replace that. Some people think it does, and the people that actually know what they're doing with art can see right through that. And so some people, for example, that don't understand anatomy or perspective or proportion, for example, in the comic book world, will draw, this whole book or a splash page, and they'll cover it with lots of filters and
Yep.
lots of effects and all this other kind of stuff to cover over the fact that they don't understand anatomy. So, yeah, the tool can only go so far. It's just a tool, for example.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I'd agree. And we've got kind of, Matt says 100% agree with you guys. We do have an additional comment on this, which is kind of going in a different rate, a different pattern, if you will. DPixelR20 says, I've been doing a lot of work on NFTs, and Rarible and some other things. Is what I'm doing having meaning, or, as the time come to let it go? And, honestly, I can't give you a definitive answer on that because I don't know what the direction is. But I will tell you this, and I don't have the citable article, so I apologize. So just know that I'm paraphrasing here, and I didn't do deep research on this, guys. But essentially, somebody had asked AI to tell them who are the future superstars of society, and I thought it was interesting because even AI's response was those who can create originality, right? The idea that something that's tangible, that's physically real, those are going to be people that are revered for skills, which is cyclical, right, Chad? I mean, we talk about what happened 300-400 years ago. Those who had a skill, whether you were a woodsman, a stonemason, somebody who had a craft and a skill, they were highly valued and highly revered because it did take time to become a master. I see some of the people that are repairing, Notre Dame Cathedral, some of these young stonemasons, you know what I mean? And their ability to recreate some of these sculptures and these pieces of stone, it's absolutely phenomenal to see their craft and their skill. I don't think that digital art is going to go away. I don't think that there's, devaluing of it for some of the things that are being created. But I think that the tangible creation, the real, is going to come back in a big way in the next 100 years because as so much digital content is created, as so much is being put out there, to physically have tangible realness, whether it's real art, real music, real dance, real theater, that's going to be something that's spectacular in my opinion. And I think that's going to be very, very true. I'm not saying this is a great analogy or a metaphor, but I talk about horses a lot. Back in the day, everybody had horses, right? Farmers had horses. A lot of poor individuals had horses, but now, most people who are able to afford to own horses are the wealthy and the elites, right? But they were a form of transportation, and it just kind of comes back full circle. It's just this weird society is just a weird thing, but realness always has a place, right? Like the great book Ready Player One. I'm not going to get the quote right, but Ready Player One, he says, the real world's the only place to get a good meal. Well, boy, ain't that true.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I would think the other thing I would say for deep pixel art as well is to answer that question, you just have to ask yourself that question: what is your goal as an artist?
Ooh.
So, like, and you have to follow that goal regardless of what other people are saying. So, if you feel like your contribution to the world is NFTs and AI generated content, then go do that and don't worry about the criticism. However, you can listen to the criticism and see if there's anything of truth in that. So, like for example, if you're creating a lot of AI generated images of like Spider-Man, for example, you might have a lot of critics that would maybe not look favorably on what you're doing because you are infringing on copyright.
Correct. Yeah.
So, so that might be something that you want to not do, out of respect for the artist that created that thing. So whatever you're creating with AI art, if it's using other artists' work without their approval, then yeah, I would say I wouldn't do it just for the sake of integrity. But if you're creating original content, which once again, I don't mean to keep harping on this, but the reality is it's very difficult to do original content with AI because AI is pulling
Going from
from
somewhere.
somewhere. It's pulling from other artists, and so you got to be very careful with that. But yeah, if you're using AI as a tool in an original way that's not infringing on other artists' work, that is true to who you are and is what you want to communicate to the world, then don't worry about the critics. Just continue to do it. But I'd just be wary
Mindful.
of mindful, yes, of the possible downside of using AI for sure. And NFTs too. Like I got into NFTs for a little while on a couple projects I did like a long time ago. And a lot of times people get an NFT for a quick dollar because, if an NFT hits and goes viral, you can make so much money off of them. And most of the artists are doing it for that. So you've got to ask yourself the question, why are you making the NFTs? At the end of the day, that NFT might not be worth anything. So then you've got to ask yourself, did I create that out of to express who I am and to contribute something to the world, or am I just doing this to take from the world?
Yeah.
And you just got to ask those questions to yourself as an artist.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I like Matt's comment. It can take years and decades to learn a craft and skill, something I can't replace, nor can, in my opinion, digital art. I think, again, it's a
Yep.
tool, but I want to keep moving on because, Chad, you've been doing some really heavy work there on a couple of those mid-ground characters. How are you feeling about the rendering of this? I'm going to take it full screen. Let's take a
Yep.
look, see where you're at and how that's going, because I like what's starting to happen there. You're really creating some background, mid-ground, foreground, and the expressions, I think, are starting to kind of get worked through. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, there's still some small things that I need to clean up and change on some of these faces for sure, but I'm pretty happy with the female with her face and her hair. So I'm still trying to work on the top of the hair just so it looks a little lopsided. So I'm still working on that. And then once I'm happy with that, then I'm going to go in with those two faces in the background on the right and really detail those out. And then there's one just kind of peeking out in the back, and then I'll probably get back to the hand. One of the things I do when I run into something that is very challenging and I get tired with it, then I'll go work on a different area in the drawing and then go back to the part that's challenging. It just helps me stay fresh. So, but the other thing I was going to say, like with the hair, you can see that I'm using a lot of lines, a lot of hatching, because I'm keeping in mind that when I go to ink this, I'm not going to be able to shade. So I've got to think in terms of hatching and line depth and those kind of things. So, or line thickness, I'm sorry, to create that depth. So that's how I do the pencil. I'm imagining what it's going to be like when I go back into ink it. So I'm not thinking of like shading as a pencil with grades and using a stump. I'm thinking you have to create shades with lines. So that's why that looks like.
So you're keeping in mind the future aspects of the process.
Yeah, 100% for sure. Yep.
Do you think that is that something that just kind of comes naturally because of your planning process, or is it something that you've kind of developed over time of knowing, where to push, where not to push, or is it just kind of come naturally as you work through all that?
Well, I like to ink my own work, so I know ahead of time what I'm going to have to do. And so I know with this hair, one of the ways of doing texture is using either the hatches or using kind of abstract shapes of shadow. Because when you look at hair, it typically has some, especially if it's darker hair, it'll have some highlights in it, but then it'll have, um, I don't know how to say it, but it'll have like a little, basically what I just said, some abstracted areas of just flat black. And then if you're doing it in color, you can add some variety because that's where you can get all the shading in. But I'm just doing black and white. So I've got to think in terms of my highlights and my shadows is basically because there's not going to be a lot of midtones. The way I create midtones in this is through texture or patterns. So I'll do it on purpose as far as in the background or in the costumes. Um, just a lot of like different ways of using mark making to create
Yep.
gray tones. I don't use a lot of gray tones in shading just because it can get messy really fast. So I'm just trying to be a bit simplistic with how I render the character and then use a lot of the other details for midtones.
Hair is something that I get asked a lot about in drawing classes and from students. And one of the things that I always tell people, Chad, is you got to remember hair. A lot of people want to draw lines for hair, right? They just kind of go, and they do a whole bunch of lines. But what I think is a mistake that people kind of often forget is that hair has volume, hair has mass, right? Even if your hair is thinning out like mine or really thinning out like yours, there is still volume to it, right? There is still hair there.
I caught that. I caught that little shot. Yeah. I just let it go. That's fine. That's
Well, I mean,
fine.
look at that beard. Your beard has massive volume, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, look at that sucker. It's amazing. But do you agree? I mean, I think often people look at it as individual strands and forget to break it down into volume and shape. And what you've done beautifully with her hair and that character's hair is it has mass, it has volumes. And so, if you're out there and you're struggling with hair, break it down into shape and make sure that you give it weight and mass rather just individual strands, because that's going to change the whole way it's perceived. At least that's what I think, Chad. Any tips or tricks you have for hair?
Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying about how I felt like her head was or her hair was a little lopsided because I'm thinking of the shape as a whole and that the hair is kind of covering, I don't want to say cover, laying over a skull that has a
Mm-hmm.
shape. And so I want the hair to reflect what's going on underneath it. So I'm thinking in terms of exactly what you said, a whole shape. It's very similar to grapes. A lot of times when people draw grapes, they draw a bunch of circles. But the reality is the grape as a whole is its own shape. And then inside of it, you have the individual grapes, which are laying on top of each other. They're not just circles next to each other. So it's the same with hair. Excuse me, with hair. You've got chunks of forms that are fit together to create the whole head of hair. So, like for example, a real easy thing to think about is that, especially in women's hair, usually their bangs are separate from the hair that flows down the side of their head. So you've got two shapes right there. You've got the shape of the bangs and the shape of the head, and then the shape of whatever is going beyond that if they have long hair. So yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with you, and I think if it's same with like grass too. A lot of times when people do
Oh,
grass,
yeah.
they just want to do lots of little blades of grass. But unfortunately, what that makes it look like is an elementary school drawing. And so you have to think of grass as a clump of a big shape with variety of shadows. And so, yes, you do put in some marks as far as some blades of grass, just like with hair. You will put in some individual hairs, but you're thinking more in terms of its overall shape and composition.
And practice, right? We talk often. If
Oh,
you want
yeah.
to draw hair, if you want to get better at drawing hair, everybody, practice drawing hair, right? Pull up some references, have a go at it, have some fun, and give hair a chance. But like an example of this is I'm going to paint. So I have a lot of little hairs that are flipping over my daughter's ear here in this painting. But I'm going to paint what's underneath first, right? I'm going to make sure that I get the ear first and then physically layer on the hair on top. So that way I don't forget about the mass that's underneath. As Chad mentioned, like with the skull, it's going to make sure that there's substance and where are those hairs coming from, right? Hairs just don't originate from nowhere. They originate from the scalp. And so you have to make sure that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to the individual strands of hair. And I think that will help you significantly if you're practicing it. For instance, when you look at Chad's beard, you may think, oh, well, those hairs are, whimsical and mystical and magical, but they're really coming from that chin, right? Like they're coming from that chin all the way down. So that really long piece of hair that Chad, you have kind of, the in the front there, that's attached somewhere on the bottom of your lip or on your chin. And so it's originating from there. So when you're drawing that, you need to show it from where it originates from, not just some standard line that's just kind of existing flatly on a page.
Yeah. And in my own defense, I always said that once I started losing my hair on the top of my head, I would let it grow out the bottom of my head. So that's what's going on here with my head. So,
well, I think it works beautifully. You wear the beard incredibly well. And I just think it adds to the overall humble nature of our wonderful humble wizard, Mr. Chad, our master draftsman, wonderful creator and content creator. And guys, we're so grateful here at the Visual Arts Academy in the studio to have the team members that we have, because, I always joke about this. And when I was a regular high school teacher, it was always joked on here in the States that those who can't teach. And it was something that I really pushed very heavily, because I think those who can exceptionally well should teach. And that doesn't mean everybody can articulate their method or articulate what they do and how they do it. But if you have a passion to share your knowledge and your skills with others, you should, because you will make a difference in somebody's life. You will change the way that they do it. We have how many students that come in this studio going, I never thought I could do this. I shouldn't paint. I don't have any skill. I don't have any talent. I've never done this. I've never done that. And then they come in for an 1.5 hour session or a 2-hour drop-in session, and they leave going, I had no idea I could create this. And you as an instructor, if you're out there and you've ever thought about doing it, give it a chance, give it a go. Find some people that you can share your passion and your skills with and see what you can do. Because when you have phenomenal instructors like we have here at the Visual Arts Academy Institute, I'm talking about Chad, I'm talking about Sarah, I'm talking about Layla, and everybody else that we have involved here, Thomas and myself, it changes the game, right? It changes the way that you create and you build a community, and that community helps you achieve success. Whether it's a small success, Chad, right? Like I've never drawn an apple before in my life, or finishing your first major piece of artwork. Those successes are contagious and exhilarating, and that's really what we live for here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. So thank you for joining us. We're about halfway through our session tonight. Golly, it's only been an hour, Chad. It's only been an hour. We've talked AI, we've talked technique, how to draw beard hair. I mean, we've talked all kinds of different stuff, and it's only been an hour, buddy.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you get in a good conversation. You lose all track of time. It's just like hanging out with some old friends,
Absolutely. Or some new friends. Like we had some new friends tonight. We're so grateful. If it's your first time joining us, drop a line. Let us know you're here. Say hi. We've had some of our old friends jump in and say hi. Give us some great comments. Matt, Patricia, Brendan, thank you guys. We've had some new friends join us. Thanks for those wonderful comments and feedback. We're just so glad you're here and creating with us. So let us know what you're working on. We've had some NFT artwork being talked about, some watercolor paintings, some beautiful charcoal renderings. It's absolutely amazing, and we're so grateful you guys for joining us this evening. Chad, when we go back next week, now next week you're going to be here as well, and are you going to be working on the same page, you think, or do you go page 1, 2, 3, 4 in your process, or do you sometimes bounce around? Do you jump to page 10? How do you kind of work through that?
No, I definitely go in order for sure. Yeah, but I do hope that this page will be done this week. I'll be out of town this coming week, so I'm not sure how much work I'll get done on it. So most likely I'll be back on this page, hopefully finishing it up next Saturday. But if not, then I'll finish that up. And when I finish the next page, I may go back and start doing some inking on the first 6 pages, so you get to see my process there. And then I'll keep going, hopefully knocking out page after page after that.
And if you guys didn't know, our very own Humble Wizard's birthday's coming up. We have a birthday boy this week. Everybody give him a shout out. Tell our Humble Wizard happy birthday. Another trip around the sun, doing all kinds of wonderful things.
I appreciate you saying that. It's actually on the 27th. So what do we got? 7 more days. Oh, yeah, in a week. Well, look at that.
See, it worked out.
Well, no. In 2 weeks, sorry. In 27 would be in 2 weeks, yeah. But I'll take it.
It's coming up soon. We know that it's coming up soon, and we can wish you as many early birthdays as we want. But we're very excited for you, Chad. It's exhilarating to be able to celebrate life and the journeys that we have and the adventures that we get to have and we get to be a part of and share. So thank you for celebrating it with us. We're really grateful and really glad. And we've got Matt here. Yes, and art encourages art. So your works inspire me, and who knows how many others. We're very grateful for that.
Yeah,
and we're grateful
thank you for
you
that.
Inspire us too.
Yeah. Oh, look at Janice already gave me a happy
Janice,
birthday. Thank you.
yeah, we
That's
got
so
Janice.
sweet.
Janice, great to see you. Janice is saying happy birthday, Wizard. We've got Matt saying happy birthday. We're still grateful for all of you guys. Janice, I hope you're doing great. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Saturday. I tell you what, the weather wasn't so nice this morning, but it's come around. It's turned out to be a really nice evening. I worked quite a bit on this back of his hand, but I tell you what, ears are tricky because you want to get the different planes of the ear. You don't want it to flatten out, but you also want to make sure that it's not overly exaggerated, if that makes sense. You don't want it to look comical, or at least I think sometimes ears can look somewhat comical if they're too rendered out. They don't feel like they're attached to the head, if that makes sense, Chad. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they just kind of like they become their own entity, and so I don't want it to feel like it's not part of the overall rendering of the head. And sometimes hair will help with that, right? It'll bring it in and it'll bring it together. But I want to make sure I get the different planes and different shapes. And I used to know all the different parts of the ear, but I have since forgotten because I'm not in practice with it.
Oh, there was a comment I was going to make earlier and I couldn't remember it, and I just remembered it.
All right.
So you were saying earlier tonight about the comment about those that can do teach. That's the
Yes.
funny saying. And then earlier tonight we're talking about, we wanted to make sure our teachers are really skilled at what they do and that they are currently practicing as artists and things like that. And just overall just the vulnerability of like sharing your process with other people, showing them your mistakes and that kind of thing. So we had that situation today. So today I was teaching a charcoal class, and our exercise today was to work from a master work, a painting. And so I picked either Turner or Monet, and they could pick from, I had about a dozen different artworks, and then the students could draw those masterworks but using charcoal. So I picked Monet's. It's a woman with a parasol, and I don't
Yeah.
know if you've ever seen it, but it's a woman with an umbrella, and then there's a boy kind of standing next to her on a summer day or a spring day or whatever.
Beautiful.
And yeah, it's a beautiful painting, but incredibly difficult to draw in charcoal. Um, but I wanted to tackle it because it's a challenge. And about three-quarters of the way through today, I said to my students, I said, I'll be honest with you. And so I was drawing right next to them. So we had all our easels set up. They had all picked a painting to work from. And I was drawing just beside them doing the same assignment. And about three-quarters of the way through, I said, I got to be honest with you guys, I kind of hate this too. Because they were all like really frustrated because it was very hard. And I told them, I said, this is a very difficult exercise, but it's the old school way of doing it. Like we've kind of gotten away from doing it. But one of in the process that the old school masters used to do is that you would work from master drawings, you work from casts, and then you would copy master paintings. And it's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you're transitioning or you're trying to show an oil painting in another medium is
Yep.
very difficult. And the thing that I kept running into, especially with charcoal, you can achieve like a painterly look with charcoal, but I found myself wanting to put in a lot of details to make it look very realistic to the painting. But I was trying to recreate some of the brush strokes, and it was becoming very tight and plastic and forced, and it was kind of ruining the looseness of it. And when I was in the middle of that, I kept like drawing and erasing and fixing and redrawing. And so they saw that whole process of me making all kinds of mistakes. And then, yeah, at one point I was like, yeah, I kind of hate this too. It is really hard. But they can see me struggle, is, I hope, inspiring for them to struggle as well and know like I don't give exercises that are hard or critiques that are challenging just to be difficult. I do it because it'll push you to become a better artist. So it's kind of a running joke so far, which I kind of enjoy, is that I try to just play with my students a little bit, be like, oh, this class is going to be the hardest class you've ever had. I always say that just for fun, because I want them to be challenged. I don't want them to come into our class and be like, oh, I'm going to draw my favorite comic book, whatever, or I'm going to draw this picture of flowers. And usually when that happens, I try to find out what's the thing they don't like to draw, and that's usually what we draw next, which they don't like at all. But the reason why they don't like drawing it is because it's difficult. So I had a very young student who we were talking about contour drawing versus form and volume and those kind of things. And I wanted them to break down. We had a couple cast models on the table, and he kept wanting to draw the torso. And I was like, you want it? And I said, the first time I was like, fine, do the torso. But I knew why he wanted to do the torso is because he liked drawing comics and cartoons and anime, and he liked to draw figures. And I was like, the reason why you like to do this, and I even told him this, I was like, you like doing this because you're good at it. You've had a lot of practice. I said, but I want you to draw this foot. And we have a foot cast. And it was like pulling teeth to get him to do that drawing, because he didn't want to draw feet, and feet are hard. But I told him, I was like, if you can learn how to draw this foot, it will improve how you can draw the torso or draw faces or draw everything else, because it's forcing you to draw and to see something, and help work on your eye-hand coordination for everything that you draw. So yeah. So anyways, it's a long story just to say, I try in my class, I know you do as well, to paint or draw alongside our students so they can see you struggle as well, and to know that we're all in process. No matter where we are, we're all learning and working and making mistakes.
Ancora imparo, my friend.
That's right.
Ancora imparo. Still, we are learning. And I'm excited to see Janice is working on liquid watercolors, which is a little bit different because she's traditionally, Janice and I have been working in some watercolor together now for some time, and she's a very abstract watercolors, but she typically works with pans. And so pulling from the liquid version of watercolor gives you a little bit of a different result right out of the gate. And I think it's exhilarating. One of our other instructors, Sarah, she tends to work with the liquid version watercolors. And, you have your pans, and both of them still use gum arabic as the binder. But Janice, I'm super excited to see that you're playing with those liquid watercolors. Eventually, I want to get you messing around with a little bit of water-based inks, and maybe even some acrylic inks. We've got some here in the academy. I want to make sure you get a chance to kind of play with them. There's some different textures, some vibrancy there. But Janice, super excited to see that you're working on that. Can't wait to see it. I was super exhilarated, Chad, in one of our classes this week, because a student who I've been mentoring and working with for a while came in and showed me some work, and it was just absolutely amazing. I was just blown away by the progress and the success that they've had, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. And it made me, kind of giddy almost, because you're like, yes, it's there. It's like, yeah, we're getting there. And not only that, then throughout that class, the work was just exceptional. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing when you get to see your students continue to thrive, and in that environment of community, to see that continued success and that growth. It's just so much fun. And then, it's just the most fantastic thing in the world. So Janice, make sure you bring in your work. I can't wait to see it. I want to see what you've got going on there. I'm going to see if I can move this back a little bit without getting in my way. And boy, I tell you what, I'm getting this beautiful light coming in, but it is not good for the camera. So if you're watching right now, I apologize if that camera's not giving you the look or the lighting. I'm terribly sorry about that, but I'm trying to get it there for you. But Chad, I think I do want to chime in on something you were talking about, which is the difficulty. Because I don't know why, but in other areas, we tend to expect that challenge and that difficulty, right? Like in sports or in instruments, right? In music, we understand that, playing a new instrument is going to be challenging, but that's to be expected, right? Or picking up a new sport or learning to play golf. Yes, there are people who can just pick it up and play right away. There are people that can get up and swing a golf club and, hit it 300 yards. Well, very few people that I'm aware of, but I'm sure it happens. But in those fields, for some reason, there's this understanding of, yeah, it's going to be hard. Yes, it's going to take practice. But do you find, because I do, in the visual arts, people come in kind of going, ooh, I should be able to pick this up and be masterful in it very quickly, right? And I think there's a misconception of that. I think, it's just like many other things, or even like cooking, right? Because you have a background in cooking. It takes time to master those skill sets and to get to where you feel like you're having success.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate thought with cooking is that, a lot of people will, they'll get their recipe off of Pinterest and make this meal. They're like, hey, look, I made this meal. It's amazing. And certainly you could do that, but it's a lot different when you spend the time to learn how to make, the mother sauces, when you learn how to like fillet steaks properly, when you learn how to rest things and sous vide things and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very different when you learn the actual techniques to things rather than just following a recipe. And I think it's the same thing. I think a lot of times people will come in with the expectation, oh, they'll just teach me do this, and this, and then I'll get it. But it's much different when you have to learn, or when you work at learning the principles for yourself, that you master those basic fundamentals, and then you can move on from that. But to get to back to your point, like, I think a lot of people, they experience art, they think it's a lot of fun, but the reason why they think it's a lot of fun, or the reason why they like drawing certain things, is because they're good at those things. And so when they come into a class and they're forced to draw something they don't normally
Yeah,
draw, or paint or whatever, then they run into, oh, I don't like this now. This is really difficult, and they don't understand why. And it's because you've limited yourself to the things that you can draw or paint or whatever it is. But to get better, you have to expand your abilities, and the only way you can do that is through hard work. So the reason why you got to that point with whatever it is, say you love drawing flowers, the reason why you got to the point of enjoying drawing flowers is because you've drawn a million flowers, and you've mastered it. You know how to do it. You have a flexibility and a freedom with it. It becomes natural to you. And you're kind of think, well, that should happen with anything. Well, it
yeah,
doesn't. You've got to, if you want to learn how to master drawing the figure, you've got to draw 100 figures, and then even after that, you've got to draw 100 more. I know
I agree.
I have some students in my class that could tell you, this is how you draw a figure. You start with your gesture drawing, you add your form, then you start to render shape and those kind of things. They could tell you the process, but when they sit down to actually do the drawing, you can see that they need a few more years of just plain figure drawing before they'll actually master the thing they know. And so that really is the key for most students. They come in with it's fun. I love doing this, but then they don't realize that in order for you to grow, it's going to take a lot of hard work.
Well, and just so everybody knows, we're all about having fun here, but we want to take the approach of, you're going to have a lot more fun when you can create the things that you want to create with the success that you want to have. And so we are trying to push people, trying to motivate people, encourage them to grow. And I think it's absolutely wonderful when you see people get challenged, Chad, struggle, but then succeed, right? And then succeed. And that's when it's exhilarating. And Janice actually has, oh gosh, Janice, I love you so very much. She says, should you stay with one medium until you master it? And Chad and I actually have, I wouldn't say varying degrees of this, but I think different thoughts. And so I'll share my thought really quickly. One, I think it depends on what is your goal, right? What are you trying to achieve? If you're trying to create a graphic novel and you're trying to draw and ink it, then you probably should focus on that, hyper focus on that, and try to achieve that goal. If you want to create, if you want to paint, go in and paint. And then if you want to draw. And I think if you're called to do something, do those things. But there is a certain level of mastery that takes repetition and focus, right? Now, drawing to me is the foundational elements of everything. So if you're going to focus on anything, drawing is one of the key ones. But I tell students all the time, I have parents come in and go, well, what should they take? What should they do this? And I go, well what's your goal for your student, or what's their goal? And a lot of times they're 6, 7, 8 years old, right, Chad? And I go, have them take what they want to take so that they have a great experience with art, that they have a positive experience with creating and producing and learning the visual arts. But then I have other students that come in and go, I want to be a painter and I want to paint X, Y, and Z. Great. Here's a pathway to get you there, if that makes sense, Janice. But then I often find that a lot of my students that quote unquote get to a level of skill with a medium, right? Whether it's, oils, acrylics, charcoal, pencil, At some point, they usually come back, and Chad, I think you would agree with them. They go, I need some kind of foundational drawing skills, right? Like I got to get back to the core basics, because even though my mastery of the oil paints are working, my VAAS, so to speak, isn't rendering or looking as well as it should be. That's my personal take. Have the experience that you want to have with art, have positivity with it. But yes, Janice, there is something that comes from mastering a medium. But I don't know if you truly ever master anything, Chad. I mean, we could paint, and Cora and Paro, right? We could paint our entire lives. We may achieve a high level of success, but you're always learning something new with what you're working with. Thoughts, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I actually don't think we disagree very much at all. I mean, I think especially when you are young, I think it is good to expose yourself to as many different mediums as possible. I don't think you should focus on one at first until you master it. I think you should expose yourself to a lot of different ones. Out of that, you'll find maybe two or three that you enjoy more than others, or that you feel more gifted at than other ones. I mean, not everyone is going to paint, not everyone's going to enjoy watercolor, not everyone's going to enjoy charcoal. You're going to have your one or two that you really like and you're better at than other ones. Then I think over the years you can find the one or two that you really want to hone in on, and then you can master that. That would be my suggestion. So people have often asked me, and I've talked about this on the live stream before,
Oh, yes, you have.
like
Yeah.
people have asked me like, hey, do you ever paint at all? And I do from time to time, especially if I want to kind of reset myself or challenge myself to do something new. But it would take me another 20, 30 years to do with painting what I can do with drawing. So I'm at an age now where I'm thinking, okay, do I want to spend 20, 30 years doing that? Or do I want to spend 20, 30 years getting even better at something that I feel very competent and confident in? And I feel like for me, I just want to focus in on the one or two things that I'm really good at and get even better at than really, trying to master many different things. Now, other artists are different. You look at a Michelangelo and he could sculpt and paint and draw and do architecture and, those guys are amazing. I'm not those guys. So, I'm going to pick my one thing that I'm good at and really go for it. So,
Yep. We got I think, a first time comment here. We really appreciate it. Janice, thank you for that. Matt, I know that was you. She goes, Hale, any advice when it comes to making your art less stiff? My art is well rendered and technically correct, but it sometimes feels soulless/stiff, if that makes sense. And I don't know if I've got this right, Stabby Amjad. I'm horrible with names. If you're first time, trust me, we all know I'm really horrible with names. But I think we find that a lot. And I would, Chad, I think you and I have a similar take on this. A lot of times it's really healthy to do loose sketches, right? Or gestural work. And I don't know if you can let us know what kind of stuff are you working on? Is it human figures? Are your human figures stiff? Is it like objects, right? Because a lot of times it's the movement or the line weight. It can be the idea to try to loosen up. I'll share something with you that one of my mentors actually did to me. Here's a piece of advice: is if you're really rendering, a lot of times we get really close, and you'll see my students do this, and we get really tight like this, kind of like Chad is drawing, which is not a problem. Chad is what I would call a tight penciler. Chad, I think you would agree with that, sir?
mm-hmm.
You have very tight pencils.
Yep.
But one of the things you can do is distance your hand, take your pencil, tape it to the end of a long paintbrush, and get away from it. Or for instance, if you can see me here, I'm further away from my canvas, and it's going to force me to loosen up because I don't have the same level of control. And I think gestural work, and when I mean gestural work, give yourself a timer. See how much graphite or paint you can put down on the canvas or the paper in 90 seconds, right? How quick, how loose can you be? Drawing from life can help with that also, because you're seeing it from a three-dimensional standpoint rather than a flat on flat on flat. So sometimes soulless stiff, depending on what you're working on. This is a phenomenal question, Stabby Amjad. It's something that takes practice, but I think loose gestural sketching will help your artwork feel less stiff, and it'll bring movement and life to your drawings and your under drawings. Chad, I think you might agree with me, but what do you think, sir?
Yeah, so in our drawing classes, our very first lesson is sharpening a pencil. And so what I have them do is sharpen their pencil like this, where it looks like almost looks
Let
like a
me
machine.
let me
Like
take that full screen, bud. Give me 1 second. I want to
Yeah.
because this I think this is huge.
Yeah, so I have them sharpen their pencil like this with an extremely long lead, and the reason for that is because you can't press down with this, and it forces you to hold your pencil just like Seth was saying at the end, and then you have to draw with your arm and not like how you write. Most people when they start drawing, they draw like this, and they're very tight. So when I'm doing the comic book stuff, I'm very tight, but when I'm drawing like realistic drawing, I draw like this, where it's at the end. Uh, Sometimes I'll even use one of these, which is a pencil extender, and then you put it in here, and then it's almost like a baton, and then you draw like this. I love drawing like this for this very reason. It keeps you very loose, forces you to draw with your arm and not your hand. So that's one thing I would suggest. And then the other thing I would suggest is, for me, this really helped, was to draw with vine charcoal, because it's basically a stick. You can't get a lot of detail out of it, and it forces you to render things very loosely. And it created for me kind of a painterly style to my drawing, and it helped me loosen up. And I would also agree with Seth, do a lot of gesture drawing. So like I would sit at the mall or at a park and just quick sketch people as they're walking by. You don't have the chance to have them just stand in place and draw them. You've got to be very loose and draw them very quickly. Even with my drawings that, like Seth said, I'm drawing very tightly. Yeah, well, I didn't get to this immediately. It was very sketchy, very loose. And then I slowly refine over a long period of time. And then it gets really tight. So I would start very loose and then get tighter. The other thing I would suggest is to do different drawing exercises. So one of the ones that I like to challenge our students with is to make a drawing without using lines. So the way you do that is you can do it with a pencil. It's easier with charcoal, but you would just start by shading in the tones. And through that, you're avoiding like confining yourself to an outline that you go back in and shade. Instead, you're starting with the shadows and the shades and the tones. And from that, you eventually find the outlines, because in reality, when you look at any object, there's not really lines in life. It's just a comparison of two tones next to each other, which creates a line. So if even as simple as like putting an object on the table, and you just render that, you just start shading, blending, all that kind of thing. Don't use any lines, don't use any outlines. And then let that object slowly emerge from your drawing, and that will help you get a lot looser as well, because I would assume that you're probably going in with an outline and then shading that outline. And what and you might even start with sketching. I'm not saying that you're not like you don't understand the fundamentals. I'm not senior art, so I can only speak so far into that. But I would assume that you're probably very highly precise and everything. But the downside of that is you're limiting the flow and expression. So you need to do some things to get over that. I would even, another exercise we do is blind contour drawings, which I never understood why we did that when I was younger, but now I do, because it forces you to make a drawing. And so a blind contour drawing is you're looking at an object, you're drawing it at a piece of paper, and you're not allowing yourself to look at your drawing. So what that's doing is it's training your hand-eye coordination, but it's also helping you get over it, having to have a beautifully perfect drawing.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so you just need to get over that part. But to Seth's point, I think part of the issue is probably you're missing out on getting fluidity, or getting the motion, or getting the atmosphere of a drawing, because you're so focused on for it being technically correct. If you can kind of get over that, then you'll get a much freer in your art.
Yep. And I think everything he just said, and I realize, again, I'm so horrible with names. So it could be Saint Abby Amjad. I don't know. I apologize for butchering name. But she actually goes on to say, amazing advice. You guys are so great, knowledgeable. Oh, my goodness. I work digital, but this is why I'm saying this out loud here, because I think what she's about to say in this next sentence is huge. I work digital, but most of this definitely works on digital as well.
Yeah.
1,000%. That's one of the things that we've talked about in the past, is that no matter what medium you're working in, traditional or digital, The foundational elements are huges. And she says, I mainly struggle with expressions and poses. I guess I tend to over-render and hyperfixate on detail, exactly like Chad was saying. So try to loosen up, work in mediums that are going to force you to loosen. I sometimes will say, give yourself a timer, 60, 90 seconds. See how much information you can get down very quickly, very loosely, and then practice to keep that same energy going, even in your more tightly rendered finishes and finals, which actually leads to another comment. We've got a couple. Guys, the conversation's amazing. I want to give this shout out to Matt here because he says it ties exactly into what we were just talking about. Not knowing that the foundation has limited me. This is why I love the Thursday night live drawing sessions. I love how Chad challenges me to be loose and work from a foundation rather than details. Yes. Details come later. And so, again, it's amazing how these conversations all kind of tie in together, guys, because it's exactly with what you're struggling with when you say it doesn't have life to it. It's stiff. It's rigid, right? This is exactly what Matt is saying, and that's why the drawing from models, drawing from life, and giving yourself those parameters greatly assist. I think it's absolutely huge. And what a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thanks for asking all these questions. This is what makes VAAS Live so great is we want to share with you guys. We want to know what you're working on. And we have another great comment here. I got to go back up because we're getting so many comments now, Chad. But I want to go back to a comment from Janice. I'm going to put it on screen. If you enjoy abstract painting, is it still important to take drawing? Oh, Janice. Oh, yes. I will speak on this one. Chad, you can speak on this one as well. Abstract painting, Chad, if you go back maybe, 6 or 7 episodes, I think, Chad, you did a beautiful 30-minute lecture. And guys, if you go back, watch some of our previous videos, he talks about the reduction from realism into abstraction. Chad, I don't need you to give the whole big spiel again, even though we could, guys, we could all benefit from hearing the wisdom of the humble wizard again. But kind of take Janice through this very quickly about how you and I agree on this 1,000%. We're both way on board with this. Take her a little bit through why it's important to have the foundational elements so that you can abstract from that.
Yeah, so I got to be honest, you kind of put me on the spot because I'm like, what did I say? So, I mean, the thing I would say, I'm trying to think of what I said because I'm like, okay, I gave a big lecture. I don't remember this lecture.
One of these days, we're going to have a producer, just so everybody knows, this VAAS Live is going to take off, and we're going to have a producer that can pull up the live video and be like, here, rewind, play it again. Here it is. We don't have it. I will kind of guide you to it because I do remember one of the things you said, which is abstraction out of abstraction is not fundamentally bad, right? It's not bad. But when you're able to render or when you're able to articulate things visually in whatever medium you're working in, there's more meaning in that abstraction then because it's a conscious decision of reduction or adjustment rather than I don't have the skill, so this is all I can produce.
Yeah. That's the one thing that I've found even in my own work is that, sometimes like I did a large abstract painting and I was going to do like a self-portrait and I was using acrylic and it wasn't working the way I wanted to and the colors weren't working. And so I just ended up abstracting it out and it turned into a painting that I enjoy and I like. But I thought to myself, I'm kind of cheating a little bit because it was difficult and it wasn't working the way I wanted to. And I fell back on something that was a bit easier to do. Because when you do abstraction, especially figurative abstraction, you're not worried so much about proportion and anatomy and those kind of things. So it was so much easier just to not worry about that when my original goal was for it to be realistic. And so sometimes people will use abstract as a way of getting around learning the fundamentals. And so that they would say, well, I don't need to learn how to draw, something accurately. I'm trying to tell my version of reality or my story or whatever. So I'm just going to use abstraction. But I would argue that your abstraction gets better the better you understand how to draw the fundamentals. And case in point, I would say, and I'll show you, I've got it right here. This is a book that we use in our drawing classes. It's called The Drawing Course by Charles Bark.
Phenomenal book.
And it is just filled with plates that you will sit down and you will copy these drawings from. Now, the amazing thing about this course is that there are several very well-known master painters and artists of the modern century that use this, two of which you would recognize. Picasso has done this course, I think, 2 or 3 times, and there's over 200 drawings in this. Like, he fully completed the course. And Van Gogh as well went through this, I think, 2 times. And so those are two abstract artists that a lot of people highly respect that were actually, especially in Picasso's case, was technically brilliant. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, and the result was he was able to abstract things out, because the reality is when you go to draw, like, especially if I'm drawing a figure, for example, I'm not just going to sit there and draw a contour. I could, but really what you're doing is you're taking a realistic object and you are already abstracting it in order to draw it, because you're breaking it down into simpler shapes and forms in order for you to get it down on the page. And
Yep.
so it's a process of, you're taking something realistic, you're abstracting it from that realism to get it on the page, and then you're going from abstraction to realism. And so in order to, yeah, and so the better you know, the better you're able to go from abstract to realism, the better you're able to go from realism to abstraction, I guess is the best way to say that.
Which I
So,
agree with entirely.
yeah, and I tell my students with cartooning and comic books as well, they just want to come in and draw their anime figures, and I'm like, can you draw a real person? Because if you can draw a real person, then it's going to make your comic books or your renderings, your if you understand the anatomy, you'll be able to exaggerate the anatomy. That's why the greatest cartoonists are so good, because they can draw a real face. They know how to exaggerate certain things, so it's still to, in order to do a caricature, you still have to get the likeness
Yep.
of the person. And the only way you can do that is if you can draw realistically, accurately, then you can kind of abstract things out. I think it's the same with painting. Yeah, go ahead.
I think of Miyazaki-san, right? Studio Ghibli, and his ability to create actual effective movement, right? That's where, like, some of the animation sequences, like if you look at like Spirited Away, or one of my personal favorites, Princess Mononoke. I mean, if you look at the movement, it's so lifelike and fluid and energy driven, and it's so accurate that even in a cartoon, you feel it and you believe it, right? It has weight, it has movement, it has volume. And so I think, Chad, it absolutely helps to be able to reduce backwards rather than trying to go from abstraction to realism, right? So, Janice, I know that, as my wife says, and she said it on here many times, we should call this show the long answer is,
long
right?
answer,
Rather than
yeah.
the short answer. We should call this the long answer is, and maybe we will. Maybe we'll change this to VAAS Live. The long answer is episode 27. But it is really good. And Janice, liking abstraction and producing abstract work and expressive work, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? It's absolutely wonderful to get those emotions out and to get the energy out. And I don't think you have to be able to do realism to produce exceptionally creative and expressive work. That's not what I'm saying, me personally. But I agree with Chad 1,000% that, yes, the more you know, the better you can reduce it down with a conscious decision-making process. And so, wonderful questions. Oh my gosh, this has just been an absolutely amazing evening so far. And we're still not done, guys. So I hope you're tuned in. If you are liking the knowledge that we're sharing, if you're liking the conversation, give us a like, subscribe, or share. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, and Twitch currently. And it's just so nice to have you guys here on a Saturday evening. We are the Visual Arts Academy and Studio out of Louisville, Kentucky. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to do these with you, Chad, for the last 27 episodes. And we're rocking and rolling. And Janice says, thank you, guys. Big heart. Janice, we love you too. We're so grateful for you. Excited to see what you've been working on this evening. So, guys, tell us what you're working on. We've got Deep Pixel Art also says that, and I want to kind of give a shout out here. He's got this really cool name, and we've got some long comments, but I'm going to see if I can get back to it. He's doing some work that basically is a fusion of the words to die and to live. It explores the emotional space between grief and survival through dark symbolic imagery. Withered flowers, cracked faces, and silent endurance. Boy, that's heavy. That actually makes me think of a movie, Chad. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Grave of the Fireflies. It's actually an animator from Studio Ghibli that did it. It is one of the most emotional, deep pixel AI art 20. If you haven't seen it, look up Grave of the Fireflies. You'll see something that's just absolutely amazing. It's highly emotional. It's grief. It's sadness. It's stricken. It is something that will move you to your core. I will be honest, in the last 20, 25 years or so since it came out, I've only watched it twice because it's so heavy, so emotional. I hope that's kind of what you're achieving, because if you can get those emotions from people, that's just a deep experience with art. Gosh, we just had a number of people jump on. Jen Siegel, thanks for jumping on. Ellie, thanks for jumping on. A whole bunch of, gosh, there's so many names. Guys, we're so grateful that you're here. If you haven't joined us yet, I'm Seth Jones, co-founder and lead instructor here at the Visual Arts Academy, and we have with us our very own humble wizard, master draftsman Chad Nuss. And what's really great, Chad, is you started this journey with us recently of going through volume 3 of this wonderful sequential art series that you have called The Silence. And we get to see book 3 come to life. This is absolutely amazing to me, because you're sharing with us the foundational drawings and the sketches from the get-go. So if you haven't picked up book 1 and book 2, go to our website, VAAS, VAAS, Louisville.com, pick up book 1 and book 2, and then watch book 3 come to life right before your very eyes. But Chad, I think this is just an amazing experience to get you watch it. And I do, before you dive into that, I want to give a big shout out to, I still apologize, I can't tell if it's St. Abby or Stabby or whatever, but I just finished all my commissions, big heart, finally have some time to work on personal art. Well, congratulations on finishing those commissions. That's always exhilarating as an artist, but yet congratulations on getting to do some personal art, because that's also incredibly rewarding. So what a big moment for you. That's absolutely amazing. Thanks for jumping in and joining us. But Chad, is it exhilarating to get to share this process with people, or is it a little bit nerve-wracking, or both?
Oh, it's a little bit of both. No one likes to put out stuff out there that is not working the way you want to, or whatever. Everyone always loves to put out amazing work that people will love, so, but you get to see the process of trial and error, and that's what a lot of this is. There are some artists where there is no error. It's just, they just go at it and it looks amazing. But for me, it's more trial and error. So by the end of this night, here in however long, 25 more minutes, when we finish up, this page will possibly look different by the time we get to next week, because I might change something. I might not like the way something's looking.
But that's
but
okay,
that's just,
right? I mean, that's okay.
It's just the nature of the process. That's right. Yeah.
Well, and thank you for the compliment. We're so grateful. We're glad that you think we're wonderful. And honestly, I mean, it's easy to be wonderful. Chad, I get told all the time, and I wish our friend was on, because, they absolutely adore you. And then, I'm just kind of the sidekick here. But what do we call it? The giant cheerleader, I suppose. But I think it's easy for me to be so positive and cheerful, right, Chad? Because we get to create. We're getting to sit here for 2 hours to create with so many people from around the world, right? We've had people join from Japan. We've had from Colombia. I'm trying to think of where our one friend is from. Was it Colombia? Or no?
Argentina, I think.
Argentina, our friend from Argentina, and we have people from Canada as well as across the United States. And it is easy to be joyful, especially when you get to experience things like with people like Janice and Matt and Brendan and, and Patricia and students here physically, but also for all of you guys that are around the world. Art is a universal language, and it's just exhilarating to hear that you get to complete some commission work and that you are getting paid for your creativity, but then also get to do it for yourself. It's amazing to me. There's no reason for me not to be excited and positive, this evening, because this is what we get to do together. And I'm just so glad we get to do it all with all of you guys. I think Matt's got another comment here, Chad. If you want to take that one, I'm going to go grab a drink really fast. I apologize. I'm going to step away, grab a drink. I already drank all my Red Bull, so I need to go get another one. So I'll be right back.
Who said they push paint around until they create something they like? It's a famous artist, but that goes to your point. Yeah, I'm not sure who that is. But yeah, I mean, there's some artists that's their process. They'll just have a blank canvas and they'll just start throwing paint up there and moving it around until something kind of emerges. And that's certainly a legitimate way of doing things. And then there are other artists that are very meticulous in their steps. They'll plan every single little thing out until the very last stage, and then there's all in between. Some artists are kind of do some quick sketches, kind of figure out what they're going to do, and then go at it, and then it changes over time. There's not really a set way of doing things. I think instead of just trying to figure out the right way, try and figure out a way that you like, and then I would challenge yourself to do maybe a different way that you're not used to. I think that's a way that you grow and learn, and you might try a different way and not like it, never use it again, and that's totally fine. And there might be another way that you've never tried before and you actually love, and it actually makes you better. So yeah, I would definitely try whatever I could.
I think, it's one of the things that we're very fortunate to have is we have a very talented apprentice here named Layla. Hopefully she'll join the show sometime. But I think Layla's a good example of that, Chad. She takes the opportunities to try new techniques, new skills, new methods. I don't want to say seriously, but she puts all of her effort into it, right? Because she's able to see whether or not this is something that's going to become part of her toolbox. Or if it's not working, she goes, this isn't for me. But I think that having that apprentice mindset, guys and gals and everybody, is that if you go into the mindset of that, learning those skills, you then get to pick and choose when and where and if you want to use them, right? But if you go in kind of going, oh, I'm stuck in my ways, you're never going to expand your tool set. And I'm constantly reminded of that with our young apprentice who's unbelievably talented. But she comes in with this mindset of, I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to practice it and I'm going to give my all into it, whether it's challenging like the charcoal class or not, and just have this positivity about it that I think is I don't want to say appropriate, but beneficial, right? It's very beneficial as an artist because you're going to constantly grow and constantly learn. Like, for example, I would love to be able to watch a famous comic artist named David Mack do some of his collage work and different art pieces, because I believe you've had that chance, right?
I mean, I didn't just get to see him do some sketches. I got to hang out with him for a whole day and like really ask him, questions about his life and his process. And we're really good friends now. So,
Curse you, humble wizard!
you
Curse
know.
you!
No, we're not really good friends. He probably wouldn't recognize me if we passed on the street, but we did get to spend an afternoon together and it was pretty exciting. So,
Well, I bring that up not just for the teasing side, Chad. I actually bring that up for a purpose, which is when you're in part of a community and you're surrounded by other artists and you're doing those kind of things of different skills and different techniques, it is exhilarating and contagious. I mean, I would assume, and I don't want to over assume here, but I would guess that knowing his skill, knowing the success that he's had, right? Were you motivated and excited to continue to work on your own stuff, or are you just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm here with David Mack and I'm just gonna, whatever. Now I can't draw compared to him. I would assume that it motivated you and excited you to do your work, right?
oh yeah, definitely. Especially I knew in the future that I would find someone that's a big fan of his that I could brag about actually spending time with him. So yeah, it was very exhilarating and inspiring for me to continue to work hard. Yeah, for sure.
But that doesn't just have to be famous people, guys. That could be a friend that you meet up with at a coffee shop and sketch together. That could be a class. It could be a whole bunch of other things, right? It doesn't have to just be these oh gosh, these masterful people. It could be, a mentor, a professor, a teacher, a friend. All of these things can be just, amazing to soak up and absorb. And, Matt's saying, yes, 100%. We're getting some comments again here, Deep Pixel AR20, thank you so much. I've learned a lot from you and I'm truly grateful to have come across you again. Well, thank you. Give us a like, subscribe, or share. We want to see you back. And I love the title. You had mentioned we were getting so many comments there across the different platforms, but I really do like the title. Again, watch Grave of the Fireflies. It will throw you for a loop. It's absolutely amazing. But Deep Pixel Art, we're grateful for the comments and the discussion. It's what it's all about, is having those kind of discussions. And I hope that you join us again and we can see where you're progressing. If you've changed doing some of that digital in a different manner, or if you're still kind of going that way, it's exhilarating to see that, it's been beneficial for you even across different mediums and skill sets. And okay, thank you for the clarification. Oh, see, I'm so grateful when people guide me, Chad, when they hold my hand, like I'm completely illiterate on how to pronounce names. So it is Stabby. It's Stabby. I thank you for letting me not feel so bad. Here's a question. Oh, this is a good one, Chad. Here we go. So it's Stabby. Stabby, you ask, is it actually good to draw all the time, I often get told to slow down and take breaks. I personally feel fine and motivated to keep going, but I feel that it could lead to burnout. Oh, Stabby. Boy, I've got one here, but I'm going to let it kind of digest for our viewership for a second. Chad, I don't know if you want to take it first or if you want me to go in with this one.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, so I
Love it.
think yeah, so I know a lot of artists like this, or have known of artists like this that tend to get hyper fixated on things. So they'll get into a groove with one particular style or one kind of drawing or whatever, and they'll just hyper fixate on it. They'll think about it all the time. They'll work on it. They'll be sketching and all that kind of thing. And I think that's totally fine. I think one of the downside is that you just get tired of doing the same drawing over and over and over again. But the beauty of being an artist is that you can do whatever you want, right? Unless you're doing a commission or whatever. If you're just working for yourself, spend as much time as you want on anything. Don't listen to anyone else telling you,
right.
to slow down or take breaks or whatever. If you get burnt out on something, it's fine to take a break. There's not like a rule that you have to, spend so much time doing something or whatever. If you get burnt out on a certain style, try a different style. If you get burnt out on the drawing, start a new drawing. I literally have, let me see if I can count them. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 projects going right now, and maybe 8. And so I just rotate between them all. And there'll be times where, like right now, I'm into this comic book, and I'll just work on this for a few months. And then I might just kind of get burnt out, or just, I don't really want to work on that anymore. So I'll go back to my landscape drawing, work on that for a little while, and then I'll go back to, I've got a large Adam and Eve drawing. I'll work on that one. I'm trying to do sketches from the Barg manual. I'll do that for a little while. So it's fine. Do whatever you want. Like, yeah. I mean, unless you're working for a commission and you have a deadline, that's the only exception, that you have to get it done. It doesn't matter how long it takes, you just got to get it done. But if you're working for yourself, like, don't worry about burning out. I mean, if you're going to burn out as an artist, then you were never really an artist. Like, I'll just put it bluntly like that, because if you're an artist, you're going to love art. So you'll adapt. You'll burn out on one thing, and you'll just try to not, or you'll take a break for a few months and not draw. Like,
nothing wrong with that. Yep.
yeah, I've been doing art all my life, but there have been seasons, and that's why I like to think of life as seasons. There's, it's just season. It's not a permanent thing, but there's been seasons where I've not drawn at all for a couple of years, just because my life was busy and I had other things going on. There's been other seasons where I drew all the time. I'm in the season right now where I have the honor of teaching and drawing for myself. Like, so there's just different seasons. So don't like feel this pressure from other people to either be fast or slow or draw too much or not draw, whatever. Like, don't do that to yourself. So that's what
I want to chime in on this, Chad, and add a little bit, because one of my sayings is, Stabby, is draw every day, right? Draw every day. That doesn't mean you have to draw for hours upon hours upon hours, but draw every day. But as Chad said, step away from it. I have a lot of creative endeavors, Stabby, and like I'm currently working on some portrait series of my daughters, because I absolutely, the greatest thing in the world to me is being a dad, and I want to immortalize these moments in my daughter's life. But when I get burned out on painting, I'll go and do my comics, which actually happens to be a comic about my daughters as well. Clearly, we're seeing a trend here in content. But when I get burned out on the comics or painting, then I go to writing, and I write on some of my novels and the books that I have. But I think it's still creative, right? It's always in a creative endeavor of some magnitude. And Chad talks about these stages of life. Obviously, Chad and I are, we're fortunate enough to be seasoned individuals. He and I honestly talk quite a bit about the joy of getting older, the fact that we're able to have these experiences in life and the seasons of life. But there was a season of my life where I didn't create a whole lot because I was doing a corporate career in marketing and advertising. But even in that, Chad, I was finding creative ways, right? I was telling stories. I was doing all kinds of different stuff. I was doing, unique things on the side here and there. And I think that, burnout of subjects and content happens. but creativity is constant, right? And maybe I should put that on a shirt or something, but I think that, if you have a passion to create, Chad and I talk a lot about we were created beings called to create, right? There's the famous, the wonderful artist. Oh, Chad, help me out with his name here with his book. You actually you gave me his book. I can't think of his name now.
Oh, let me see. I have it downstairs.
This is one of the bad things of getting older, Stabby, is that you can't remember things. But it'll come to us old men here in a second. But really,
Fujimura.
Yeah, Makoto Fujimura.
Fujimura.
And I'm probably butchering that name as well, Stabby. but he has a wonderful book about inherently we are called to create. And Stabby, if you like drawing every day, if it's something that's not impeding other aspects of your life, friendships and family and things like that. Again, I believe very heavily in friendship and family, but everybody's different. But I like drawing every day. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And I think what Chad stated is brilliant and very profound. And I think it's a great question, and sometimes slowing down is not bad either, though, Stabby. I will say that. Sometimes stepping away from your work, backing back, backing away from it a little bit is really good and beneficial as well. So sometimes slowing down a little bit is not a bad thing, but I don't think that they're exactly the same, if that makes sense. And yes, Matt Griffin, excellent. Thank you so much. Art and Faith by Makoto Fujimura. It's a brilliant book. Even if you're not an individual of faith, it's excellent talking about how inherently we're called to create. What a phenomenal job. Thank you, Matt, for sharing that. But guys, gals, everybody that's jumped on, we're coming up on almost 2 hours of talking with you guys. Again, I'm Seth Jones, co-founder and lead instructor of the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. And with me is Chad Nuss, our humble wizard, as it says on the screen. We're so grateful that you're here. This is just, Chad, what an amazing evening. I mean, this has just been so many wonderful conversations. Thank you, Stabby. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Patricia, Brendan. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, AI Art. Just thank you, all of you guys, because this is what this community is about. This is what it is. I mean, Chad, it's been almost 2 hours, but it feels like we just started this thing. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I still got plenty to work on my drawing.
We got a lot of work to do, buddy. Speaking of a lot of work to do, I think I'm going to show you guys. I set out a goal. Chad asked me early on, Chad, you asked if I had a goal for today. And I said, you know what? I kind of do have a goal. I was a former athlete, former coach. And so I do like setting myself goals. Now, as Chad has helped me through, Thomas, our other co-founder, has helped me through, a lot of times just because you set yourself a goal doesn't mean that you were successful or unsuccessful, but it helps me as an artist athlete to find success in that goal achievement. So let me zoom out here for a minute, and I'm going to show you guys where I'm currently at. If you just joined us, thank you for jumping in. Looks like our numbers keep kind of jumping up there. I'm working on an old Flemish grisaille process of a portrait of my daughter. I'm going to swing it around. I'm getting some really big sunlight here, but you guys can kind of see this. I'm going to see if I can take this full screen, Chad. Give me 1 second, and then we're going to bounce back to you, buddy. We're going to go here. So this is where I'm currently at, and you guys can see the whole thing. This is my daughter sleeping like a pretty little angel. She's a pretty princess. But this is where I got. And my goal today was the back of that hand. I'll show you guys. So I really wanted to accent these fingers and these knuckles here. And I don't know if you can really see it too well on the camera or not. But let me know what you guys think. Do you like how this hand kind of rendered out, how it turned out today? That was one of my big goals. And then the second goal was to really start honing in on the ear, making sure that the ear didn't feel detached from the face. She does have quite a bit of hair that's coming up under and over here, but I really wanted to start building out the shapes of the ear here, and I feel like I accomplished that, Chad. I feel like I got quite a bit done today, buddy. I'm very pleased with it. Sorry, I'm swinging the camera around here a little bit, guys, but I'll show you again. This is the full piece. It's 30 inches by 40 inches. It is oil on gallery wrap stretch canvas, and this is my grisaille process. Something that I do a little bit differently is I am a huge fan of raw umber, Chad. I love the organic nature of raw umber. It's one of the oldest pigments. They estimate it could be potentially around 17,000 years old, depending on how you look at time. But it is a very ancient pigment. It's very earthy, and I absolutely love it. So instead of doing black and white, ladies and gents, instead of using, like just straight titanium white and either ivory black or Mars black, I end up actually using raw umber and titanium white to give it a little bit earthier tones and to give it an earthier pigment. And then I do glazes on top to get the colors. So this piece is not going to finish. It's not going to finish in black and white. It'll actually finish something kind of like this one over here. Let's see, Chad, can you guys see that painting there, bud?
Yep, we see it.
And so that is a portrait of my other daughter. And that is really where the earth tones come through and the glazes come through. So it's not going to just be a black and white painting, even though sometimes I wish I would leave it black and white. I am going to do glazes on top and really get some color. So if you ask me if I had a successful evening, Stabby, if you asked me if I had a successful evening of painting today, I would tell you that this VAAS live session was great, and I feel very confident with it and feel really, really good. And thank you for the compliment, Stabby. I really appreciate that. Appreciate the fact that you noticed how good those fabrics are. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, Chad, what about you, bud? How are you feeling about your progress outside of giving beautiful wisdom and wonderful advice this evening? Do you think your drawing went well?
Well, thank you. Yeah, there are parts about it that I like and parts of it that I want to improve on. So that
sounds par for the course with you, my friend. That sounds about right for a Chad response.
Yeah, so I mean that's what we do in our classes. I always ask the student, tell me one thing you like and one thing you want to work on, and so that guards against just everyone just like, oh, everything's amazing, blah blah blah, or the other end of the spectrum where it's like, oh, this is horrible, I hate everything. Well, no, there are things that you like and things that you're still working on. So for me, I'll show you just kind of a little bit of a close-up of what I've done here. Yeah, so I like the girl's face and hair. I'm pretty happy with that. I like the guy up in the upper right where you see his profile. I like him. I think that's pretty good finished. The two hands that are trying to open the door, I'm pretty happy with those. The face of the one on the right looking at us, I'm not super happy with how I've rendered that. And that hand where he's trying to push the door to the side, not a big fan of that either. So I'm probably going to rework that a little bit. And then the face in the middle, which I already did before coming in here, I'm just starting to kind of darken in some of the lines. I feel pretty good about that face. The only downside is that face is a little bit bigger than the others, so it looks like he's closer than he should be, and I don't want to redraw the face. So that's a bit of a downside of this drawing, is that they're all kind of parallel with each other. They're trying to force this door open, but he looks a little bit closer than the others, which he is because they're all squished in this area, but he almost looks like he's on the other side of the door. So that's the only downside of that. So I may do some things to try and change that a little bit, but either way, overall, I think successful time together for sure.
That's awesome. I think it's successful just because we had so many wonderful people join us and watch. And guys, we do this every Saturday, almost every Saturday. We've started bringing on some guests, our additional co-founder. We're hoping to get a couple of apprentices, a couple of other artists. It's just been a joy to share our creativity with you guys and the successes that we have. And I love hearing about what you're working on. So thank you all so very much for jumping in and doing all kinds of different fun stuff. Nancy, thanks for jumping in. AIR, Jen Siegel, Eliana, S. Rodrigo, everybody, all of you guys. There's almost too many to name now, guys. So if I miss you or mispronounce your name, I apologize for that. But we're so grateful that you've joined us and that you've been creating with us here. Again, we're the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. We're going on episode 28 next week, Chad. Can you believe that, buddy? We're getting close to 30 episodes. That means almost 30 weeks of doing this. It's pretty fun, pretty spectacular, I think, to have so many people get involved and to have friends and everybody from around the globe. We've got Stabby saying, I love how expressive they are. I wish I could do expressions that nice. Well, Stabby, keep practicing. Keep doing the work and loosen up. Do some of those things that Chad talked to you about, and your facial expressions won't be so stiff. Your best friend, in my opinion, is grabbing a mirror, making some crazy faces like I'm doing right now. Make some crazy faces in that mirror and try to draw them as best you can, and you'll capture a lot of liveness. Janice, she says, good night, great night. Thank you. Big hearts to you as well, Janice. We're so grateful. Chad, I think you would agree with that, right? Sometimes doing expressions, make an expression in a mirror and try drawing that, right, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, or you could even just Google different expressions and you'll get a lot of Google images you can practice from. I'll use those as references sometimes. I usually don't draw directly from, like I usually don't take a Google image and transport it into my drawing, but I will use it as a reference to just know how certain things work together. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming up. Even though we just keep adding viewers, it's almost like we got to keep this going, but we try to stick to a pretty good schedule. We are going to do this every Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We bring on different individuals. We talk all kinds of different stuff. So make sure that you grab your sketchbook, hit the like, subscribe, or share button so that you can follow us on your platform of choice, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, X. We enjoy bringing these to you guys each week, week in and week out, showing you all the different creative processes, talking art history, skills. We try to bring the creativity to the conversation and the conversation to the creativity. So you guys have been absolutely wonderful this evening. Thank you all so very much. We will see you next week on VAAS Live, episode 28.